He thought he was just doing his job serving food with dignity, like he did every day. But when a powerful billionaire looked at him, he didn't see a man. He saw a target. Laughter filled the room, sharp and cruel, as the waiter stood frozen. They thought he was powerless, voiceless, nothing more than someone to mock. But what happened next would silence the room, flip the power dynamic, and leave everyone questioning what respect really means. Are you ready to hear the truth behind that moment? It was supposed to be just another shift. The waiter, a young man who carried himself with quiet pride, had grown used to long hours on his feet. He didn't have wealth or power, but he had something he valued even more: dignity. Every plate he served, every glass he carried was a reflection of his determination to rise above the labels the world tried to place on him. In the glittering dining hall, surrounded by chandeliers and silk-covered chairs, he was invisible to most. Guests barely glanced his way, treating him like part of the background. Yet behind his calm eyes was someone who understood more than people assumed, someone who had worked hard, studied harder, and carried a story no one bothered to ask about. But that night, the illusion of being unseen would shatter. When the most powerful man in the room turned his attention toward him, the quiet rhythm of his life was about to collide with humiliation, cruelty, and something no one expected. Dining halls sparkled with gold accents, crystal glasses, and the quiet murmur of wealth. For most, it was an evening of luxury, laughter, and fine wine. But for the waiter, it was work steady, honest work that helped keep food on his family's table. He moved gracefully, balancing trays, refilling glasses, and staying unnoticed, as he always did, until one voice cut through the noise like a blade dot. At the head table sat a man whose wealth commanded the room, a Chinese billionaire known for arrogance as much as power. He leaned back, smirking, his eyes fixed not on the food, but on the waiter. With a mocking grin, he whispered something in Mandarin to the guests around him. Their laughter erupted, cruel and sharp, piercing the air. Heads turned and eyes followed. The waiter felt the sting of being the punchline without even knowing what had been said. But then he understood. Words don't need translation when they're laced with scorn. A gesture toward him, a mimic of clumsy chopstick use, a smirk that said more than language ever could. The room laughed harder. The waiter's chest tightened. It wasn't just a joke, it was a dismissal of his humanity, a reminder of how the powerful see the powerless. Still, he stayed silent. His job depended on composure. But inside, the humiliation burned. Each laugh seemed louder than the last, echoing in his head. He thought of every time he'd been underestimated, ignored, or treated as less than human. And now, here it was again, played out in front of a crowd. The billionaire wasn't done. He raised his glass and, with deliberate cruelty, spoke louder this time. His words in Mandarin dripped with disdain, painting the waiter as nothing more than a servant unworthy of respect. Guests leaned closer, eager for entertainment. It was no longer a private jab, it was a public spectacle. The waiter's hand trembled as he placed a plate on the table. He could feel the weight of every eye on him. His ears rang, his heart pounded, and for a split second, he wanted to disappear. But deep down, something stronger began to rise: a defiance, a refusal to shrink in the face of ridicule. He inhaled, steadying himself. The room expected silence. They expected him to endure, to walk away, to let their laughter linger unchallenged. But what they didn't expect was what came next: something that would turn the laughter into stunned silence. The room seemed to hold its breath. The billionaire's words still hung in the air, dripping with arrogance, and the echo of cruel laughter rang in the waiter's ears. His hands trembled, but not from fear anymore, from something deeper, something uncheckable. He looked directly at the billionaire, meeting his eyes for the first time. And then, in flawless Mandarin, his voice cut through the noise like a blade, calm, steady, and precise. Every syllable landed with the weight of dignity reclaimed. The laughter stopped. Forks froze mid-air. Guests stared wide-eyed as realization dawned. This man they mocked, this waiter they dismissed, understood every single word. The billionaire's smirk faltered. His face drained of color, caught between disbelief and shame. For the first time, it was he who felt exposed, stripped of power in front of his peers. The room, once filled with laughter, was now silent enough to hear the clink of a glass. The waiter didn't shout, he didn't insult. He simply spoke with the confidence of someone who refused to be diminished. His words carried truth, intelligence, and quiet strength, everything the billionaire had tried to erase with mockery. In that moment, the balance shifted. What was meant to humiliate became a revelation. Guests who had laughed now avoided eye contact. Some lowered their heads, uneasy with the cruelty they had endorsed. The power of language, of reclaiming dignity, had silenced a room built on wealth and privilege. And as the waiter stood tall, his final words echoed in a language they never expected. Respect is not given by money, it is earned by humanity. The moment passed, but its weight lingered long after the laughter died. The billionaire shifted. Uncomfortably, his power stripped in an instant, while the waiter returned to his duties with the quiet dignity he had carried all along. He didn't need applause. He didn't need validation. His strength lay in the fact that he refused to be broken, refused to let someone else define his worth. But what happened that night was bigger than one exchange in a glittering dining hall. It was a mirror held up to society, reminding us how easily people in power dehumanize those they see as beneath them, and how often bystanders choose silence over courage. The truth is, racism doesn't always appear in violence on the streets. Sometimes it hides in laughter and whispers, in the casual cruelty of those who think their privilege makes them untouchable. For the waiter, the moment became more than an act of defiance. It was a declaration. He proved that respect cannot be bought, mocked, or silenced. And in doing so, he gave voice to countless others who endure humiliation quietly every single day. So we're left with a question: how many more moments like this must happen before we learn to see each other's humanity first? How many times will dignity need to be defended before equality becomes the norm, not the exception? Because in the end, this story is not just about a billionaire or a waiter, it's about all of us. And the real change begins when we stop laughing at cruelty and start standing for respect.